Islamic economic system is a valid system that most people are not aware of, and most people link it just for a spiritual. They have a spiritual understanding of it, but it is a system that has all the elements and components of an economic system, just as capitalism and socialism and welfare state system. So it does deserve the opportunity to actually be introduced and be implemented, and people deserve to know about it because it does serve a lot of social justice and fairness and balances to the community between like social and economic aspects, which is very important.
And if you look at the context or the environment that we're in right now, over here we've got the World Bank, which effectively has that mandate. Then we have a government currently in power, which really is supportive of this at the moment. But then you also have this rising tide of, I guess, this awareness with the everyday New Zealander around, well, we actually don't want to just engage with stuff that generates a profit. We actually want to do something that's good. So there's this kind of social element going on, right?
Exactly. And this is why now we have a working group we developed a project to introduce Islamic finance, but it's going to be a social justice financing system.
A social justice financing system. Just rolls off the tongue. There's got to be some sort of word that we can use for that one, right?
We will find a shorter term, but we anticipate it's going to be like 2 to 4 years project. It's a huge project.
Okay.
We're talking about a market size of $2.2 trillion around the world. I think that it's less than, in the modern history, it's less than 100 years old. So Islamic finance was used previously during the Islamic and the Ottoman Empire, and then there was a long time where it was not applied, but then it came back in the 40s and the 50s, and just from the 40s to now, it grew up to be the size. And if Global Finance magazine, in an article published in 2018, stated that it's one of the fastest growing areas in the banking industry today.
Right.
So
and they describe that as fastest growing area in the banking industry, which is interesting.
Yeah.
Because it's almost, in a sense, it's kind of like, it's quite a strong term to use, I guess, but it's not necessarily banking as we know it, is it?
So they were talking about the musharaka and murabaha and interest-free loans and mudaraba and sukuk. So they were talking about just that part of it, which they referred as the fastest growing. So the sizes of banks, like more banks are opening, more financial institutions. So we're also talking about the Muslim population in the world now is 1.8 billion, which is about quarter of the world population.
Sure. Yeah.
So, but the way in our working group and this project, we are using it, or we are introducing it as social justice. So it's not necessarily for only Muslim population.
Sure. Which is a really important distinction to make, because I guess some of our listeners might be thinking, well, how is this relevant to me? Well, this is very relevant because you don't have to be a vegetarian to try the salad. There are things that we can learn from all sorts of, and if our system was perfect, and when I say our system, if the incumbent system was perfect, then fair enough. Let's close our minds. But it's not, and there are areas which we can and need to improve on with the current financial system. And maybe there's some learnings here, or maybe we just need to kind of zoom out. If in doubt, zoom out. Look at a bigger picture here.
Bigger picture. This is a key word, because because Islam is one system. And we have the Islamic economic system, just part of this system, and we have the Islamic finance, which is the implications and answers to the principles laid down by the Islamic economic system. And because it's all one system, it doesn't only look at the financial aspect, it looks at social aspect, environmental aspects, family laws, so many things.
Right.
So it's one complete...
Environmental, social, good governance. That's a thing now.
Yeah, exactly. These are the things. Yeah. So the economic system prohibits the overconsumptions of resources and the expenditure on things that's luxury and unnecessary. So it's it comes under economic system, but it's actually environment, because we are having a sustainable system that protects our resources.
Correct.
So this is why while the current systems focuses on only the economic sides, this system actually has a further more dimension. Because of that, people now tend to find quick solutions. So we have a social problem, we make social organizations or social work or things like that. They try to solve the issue but they do not go to the roots of it, because it's more time consuming, it's required more research. So any problems we have now, we have an NGO that works on this issue.
Yeah.
Just solve the issue, not solve the problem.
Correct.
And these
Band-Aid
are
solution.
two different things.
And it creates a distortion because then that interferes with market signals everywhere else. And
Exactly. So everyone now coming with their own solution, which it doesn't necessarily will all match in a harmony. While the Islamic economic system, because it's all one system, it's more coherent and it's inclusive of all these issues. Or the economists, they don't have the psychological understanding, they don't have the environmental understanding, they don't have the family understanding. They have, everyone just knows they're experts in their own area, and they're working in this area only.
That's right.
But
a good plumber can't design and build an entire house.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So, and a good engineer is not good with plumbing maybe or whatever. So but that's why they all have to come under one construction company to be able to make it all match and work in harmony together.
Well said. That makes sense.
So that's what it is.
Yeah.
So this is the economic system, and under that we have the financial system. Now in New Zealand, unfortunately, we still don't have any. Except for Amana, Kiwi Saver, which is, it's not a financing. So one thing of Islamic economic system is the prohibition of trading in things that's called or considered unethical by Islam, like alcohol,
That's right.
gambling, pornography,
Yeah.
arms, tobaccos, and other things.
Right. So like in the current context with some Kiwi Saver providers, ESG investing is kind of their mode, and they exclude based on that. But I guess the difference here, and forgive my ignorance, but the main difference here is that this was around long before we discovered it.
Yeah.
Right? And pork is on the list.
Oh, okay.
Is that right?
Pork is on the list.
Yeah, pork is on the list. Who knew?
Yeah.
Right? But apart from that, it's actually it's nothing new, is it?
It does make sense. I mean, it's not just in Islam. Most other religions prohibit the same things.
Yeah, why would you want to invest in a regime which is encouraging child prostitution,
for example,
or munitions manufacturing and stuff like that, right?
Exactly.
Yeah, so it makes a lot of sense, doesn't it?
And gambling comes under the in Islam financial system. Again, it prohibits speculation, which is called gharar in exam, and that means uncertainty. You should not enter in an agreement that's uncertain.
Sure.
So gambling, it's mainly uncertain. It's based on uncertainty actually, and that does have so many negative impacts: financial impacts, social impacts, and we do see even impacts on families. Like many people lose their money. They, many people cannot deny that gambling does have a negative impact on them or on their family.
Okay.
But in terms of financial, financing or banking, New Zealand still does not have that. UK hosts 6 Islamic banks, along with another 20 lenders that currently offers Islamic financing. The US has 25 Islamic institutions. Australia has 7 financial institutions, and 2 Australian banks offers Islamic finance.
Right.
So,
and how many in New Zealand again?
0.
Okay, just to be really clear.
Yeah.
Now, I guess maybe we can be forgiven for making the assumption that, well, the market's not big enough. There's only 60,000 Muslims in New Zealand, but really is this just for that community? Isn't this something that we could all potentially benefit from?
And this is what this project that we are working on. This is what we are telling the people. It's sourced from, it's derived from the Islamic system, but it's applicable to everyone, and it does provide good outcomes socially and economically and environmentally, and and all those other aspects.
That's right.
So why don't we just and this is what the World Bank is talking about when they said they called for financial inclusion. Basically, the World Bank saying that government's obligation is to put all the options on the table, and the people has the right to choose, and that means you put all the available, not only all the ones that you have currently. If there are other options that can be put on the table.
That's a mandate.
Yeah.
So there is that mandate at a very high level for New Zealand to put down all of the options that are currently available, not just a subset of them, ones that they deem to be appropriate, but all of the options.
Yeah.
That's an important thing, I think, to
And,
to
and,
know, right?
and I know New Zealand now is really very strong on social justice. So this system does provide social justice on many different aspects. There are a number of options that New Zealand can start to introduce this, either through existing banks. I had a meeting with a number of banks, and they said that they don't have resources because the demand is not high. But again, we're going back to the same point. The demand is not high because they're thinking of only the Islamic population.
Correct, that's right.
So if you actually, if people know what this is about, then people will choose it even if they're not Muslims. So you're opening to all the New Zealand population, and it will be just like any other tools that the bank will use or will introduce. Other option is we have other like organizations like Finance now is and they are very supportive of our project.
How do you spell that?
Finance, Finaz. It's Federation Islamic Association of New Zealand.
Yes.
Now, financial has more than one tools, or serves more than one purpose. So we have things to do with making housing easier and more accessible, helping people with business to start small and medium-sized businesses, and also for investment.
It's so relevant for the everyday investor in that, well, let's put it this way. With the current system, interest rates are so cheap. You'd be forgiven to think that, well, let's just get more of what we've already got because it's working so well in a sense. But underneath the surface, there's a story going on. You don't have to dig that deep. And then you can reveal some significant risks, structural risks, that will manifest itself arguably in the next 5 to 10 years, maybe even sooner. And we need to be open-minded about looking at some other tools, some other options to borrow, to buy homes together.
Exactly.
And I use that phrase purposely, to buy homes together rather than just get a mortgage. To invest, are there other ways of doing that? Are there other ways of funding small to medium-sized businesses and going even further up that chain where maybe it's bigger than what you'd expect businesses because there is a gap there?
Yeah.
And we've had people on the show talking about that, how there is a significant gap with funding businesses that are already operating. So these tools that we're about to talk about could be used in New Zealand to create a pathway and unlock resource for people that desperately need it. But also on the flip side, from an investor's perspective, there's a new way that you could potentially look at how investing works. And, it's not just about a rate of return and minimizing your fees. It's not actually just about you. It's about what impact does that create, right?
And it's also what's impact create on the whole system.
Right.
So
the ripple effect.
Yeah. So this is for example, one of the main features of the Islamic finance is the prohibition of riba or prohibition of riba. Riba is interest, or it's been referred to as usury.
Right.
Some people define usury as over a certain amount of interest or a certain percentage of interest. Some people define usury as any interest.
Right, so qualitative bit and a quantitative bit.
But in both cases, it is an extra and over amount over the principal amount of money that you actually borrowed.
Sure.
So the prohibition of interest, I did refer to it briefly in the paper again. It has so many, it's really important because there are religious, ethical, and economic arguments for the prohibition of interest. This increases the gaps between the rich and the poor. So poor are becoming poorer because they have to keep paying the interest back regardless of their economic situation.
Correct. Yeah.
And the rich are getting richer by making money out of money.
Correct.
And just making money out of money itself has so many negative impacts to it. It's not just social but also economic impact, because people will be discouraged from working. If you have good money in the bank, you can live out of the interest of this, if your deposits from the saving account, without the need to think about actually investing and working and making a business and employing people and helping people become employed and get off the benefit. So just the idea of creating money. So this is a social or economic impact, but there's also like other economics impacts for the interest that does have, I wouldn't say destroy the economy, but on the long run, interest is really affecting the circulation of money in the economy. So
okay. Do you want to drill down into that a little bit more?
So it's going only in one direction, basically. So it's instead of everyone gets the benefit of this money, people are just always being disadvantages and people are, being advantaged. It's pretty much the same as the increasing the gap between both of them.
Sure, so the money is flowing. The money flowing kind of upward toward the very top is what you're saying.
Yeah.
And you can only get some of that if you're in that hierarchical sort of structure.
Yes, exactly,
Right.
exactly. And there are things like, interest does discourage people from borrowing money even if they need it to do some businesses, and many people are not taking it like for either religious reason but also many people are so worried that they cannot pay it back. So that's another negative impact on that. It's very important point. The problem is with interest, and because you are creating money out of money, we have a lot of like increasing the size of the money, but the size of production is the same.
Interesting, because it's not backed by
assets.
Right, assets aren't backing that currency anymore. It's moved so far away from that where it's just credit now.
And this is the other principle in Islamic finance: is any financial transactions has to be backed by assets.
Right.
So because we don't want to reach this point, we don't want to create a lot of money and don't have real value for it. And some of the areas behind the collapse of or the financial crisis was that because we have money in the market, but we don't have production on the other side.
Interesting.
So that's a very actually important point.
It is, yeah.
Other point is that might be more political. So banks, reserve banks and federal banks, like and things like the state, they have a control over the interest rate. And interest rate is basically controlling the economy. So these institutions, the Reserve Bank, we cannot deny they have so much power in the economy and in the country eventually, because any politics is affected by the economy.
Yes.
Now,
That's right.
the governors of those institutions are not elected. So we have an unelected people running a democratic system.
Yeah.
And
a contractor, if you like.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And this is quite dangerous because we do and vote for the people that we believe in their ideologies and what they're going to do to the country. But on the other side, we have people who have as much, if not more power, or appointed, that we don't. So this is one of the reasons of the prohibitions of interest. Is
it kind of removes some of that element of power, right? Or
it gives the power to people who are not the ones that, in the right place. I'm not disrespecting any of the people in these positions. I'm just talking in theory.
Yes.
That maybe in New Zealand or in other countries, the governments or those banks are really great. We're not saying they are bad.
Sure, but it's structurally, there's an issue with the structure, not necessarily the people, but the way that it's been set up.
Exactly.
It's kind of at a disadvantage, partly because of the whole interest rate piece, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And many people never see this point.
Right.
It's been overseen for so many years that the decisions in this country might not always come through the
through a democratically elected government of the day.
Exactly. I mean, and money is powerful. No one can deny this.
That's right.
And
no one can really state confidently that there's a clear separation, for example, between the Reserve Bank and the New Zealand government.
No. And not the federal bank and the American government.
Correct.
And it's very closely connected. Governments do borrows from the Reserve Bank. And that's something that's in all countries. It does happen in all the countries. So this is a very important point.
So when we say it goes to the heart of the matter, it really does. So
interest does goes to the social. It affects our everyday life. It affects our people do have to work so hard, leaving families behind because they need to repay all those debts and pay the interest. Credit cards is an addictive thing. I mean, we all know that.
Credit cards, hire purchase, payday lending.
Yeah.
Those are the worst interest rates out there. When you figure out the annualized rate, it's pretty crazy.
And I don't think everyone who does money understand this.
No, unfortunately not. And we're all to blame.
Yeah.
I think, to be honest.
Yeah. I mean, even if you try to educate the people, most people wouldn't. Most of us just sign.
Correct. Yeah, I
accept.
just need some money because I got to get that,
Yeah,
Toyota
exactly.
Prius.
Especially if you have kids, you have school,
Yeah.
medicals. There are so many things that
That's
force
right.
us.
Yeah,
to
I can't get to work because my tires have just blown out.
Exactly.
I need
So-
to get an advance on my pay.
Exactly.
And like you said before, those are the highest interest rates targets. The
Most
highest
vulnerable.
interest rate target the most vulnerable people. Hence,
Exactly.
it's not just a separation of the rich and poor. It's more just you taking that poor and you're shoveling them further down that hole.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And this is where we talked earlier, is that there's it's people who works in economic, they don't understand psychology. So
Sure.
when you think of interest as as a negative, a positive thing,
Yeah.
but probably the economists did not understand that people do get addicted to it. People do get drained by it. People do leave families to try to work harder. They didn't look into these dimensions. So that's when people only work in their area of expertise, develop it, but don't understand the other impacts of
That's
it.
right.
And
That's right.
this will take us back to the first point. When you have a complete coherent system, it actually looks at all.
If in doubt, zoom out.
Yeah, exactly.
Probably one of the keys to unlocking better economic understanding for me personally has been talking to my wife, who comes from a psychology background, because
There
you're
we
right.
go.
Yeah, like how we conduct ourselves with our resources says way more about our mental state
Yeah.
than what we acknowledge. That's on a microeconomic perspective, but on a macro perspective, it's the same thing. You can't ignore the social. You can't just focus on the financial. It doesn't work.
And I'm sure when you talk to someone from environment department, they will tell you about all the environmental impact
Sure.
of people spending too much money. They get addicted to buying stuff that plastic things, and we're all talking about those issues today.
Yeah.
And we don't need it. It's overconsumption. It's waste of resources. It's and again, this is all prohibited by the Islamic economic system.
Right.
So you talk to psychologists, you talk to environmentalists, you talk to everyone. Will give you their own view of the same topic.
Gotcha.
It's one topic, but everyone see it from their own angle.
That's right. Yeah. Interesting, isn't it?
It is very interesting.
But it's human nature, right?
It is human. Yeah,
Yeah.
we are all human. So how can we do this in New Zealand?
Yeah.
Or what are the tools that
Correct.
we can implement? So because an interest is okay. So we don't have interest. What do we have? We have a system that's based on risk sharing. So interest is basically risk shifting.
Yeah.
So you shift all the risk from the lender to the borrower.
Correct.
So you'll have
and it's all represented in an interest rate. And if you're higher risk, then your interest rate is higher.
Exactly.
If anyone's wondering how that works. Yeah.
Yeah. So people who borrow the money will have to pay it back regardless of. So if you borrow money to invest, your business, you lost your business, they fail in the business, you
Doesn't
still
matter.
have to pay it back.
Yeah.
In Islamic system, we have a risk sharing.
Okay.
So both parties actually share the risk, which means that in a state of borrowing money, the financial institutions will become your partner. So it's called musharaka, and musharaka means partnership. So I am, as a financial institution, because I'm your partner, I will make sure that you do a good job, because I'm
Interests are
also
aligned. Yeah.
because I'm also part of the risk.
Yeah.
So this will not just create more justice, it will also create better businesses, because financial institutions have better resources, has better business analysts, better business planning, department. So they will, the bank or the financial institution, before becoming your partner, they will have to make sure your business is, well, no one can guarantee 100%.
Well, because, like you said, because you're sharing the risk, therefore they're going to be, there's way more in it to them because they can't collateralize that debt obligation and to sell it to somebody else.
Yeah, exactly.
So if we're just to boil this down a little bit and use an example of, say, an engineering firm who's making widgets across New Zealand, and they're just buying raw material and they're selling it out, and they need to grow their business, take it to the next level, or maybe to enter an export market or something like that. In this type of concept where there's some sort of funding arrangement, let's say, and I don't want to use the term lender because that's
Financer.
That's probably more accurately. So a financier assesses your risk, not because they're trying to set an interest rate, but because they want to know if they can put their skin in this game, right?
Exactly.
And so they're going to be on your team. They want you to succeed, not because they just want to ensure future interest payments get paid back to them and the capital eventually gets paid back to them, but they want to see the overall pie grow, correct?
Exactly. And the difference between these two scenarios is in the first term, if you have a business, you end up selling your business. So they will get their money back. They don't really care as much because I'm getting my money anyway. Even if it's a limited liability, I'm a secured editor. I will get my money anyway.
Yes.
I will do my job. Want to make sure I don't get into court and troubles and waiting too long. But eventually I will get my money. And this is why we have collaterals.
Right.
So you don't pay me the money, I will take the collateral.
Backing that
But
loan.
the other scenario, no, I am in the game with you.
Right.
It's my money.
Yeah.
And if I lose it, I lose it.
Right.
So they are way more conscious and they are way more careful about ensuring that this step that you are doing in your business is a good step.
Gotcha.
So
I like that. So tell me, if we were to just throw in a little bit of a random thing into the mix here and talk about peer-to-peer lending, in the context of
musharaka.
Musharaka. Thank you. In that is it fair to say that the financier is effectively a peer in that you are directly interacting with them?
No.
No?
So it will be more like the financing partner is like a sleeping partner, like where they just provide the money, but they don't interfere with the management, if that's your question.
Okay.
So I'm not going to like put my nose in your company and tell you how to do your work with your employees or whatever. I'm just going to make my job in assessing. I will need to know information about your company. I will need to know about your departments and, a lot of things.
Sure.
But
just like a bank would potentially assess you as well,
exactly.
right?
And this is part of any business plan.
Right.
You need to know all the elements that you have before you actually give the green light and go ahead. So it's the same. But he does not, eventually in Islam and in any other system, contract is where you set your rules, In the contract, you put your own law. I teach contract law, and in the contract, you make your own laws, And so this is where in the contract, you can decide whatever you like.
Sure.
But if this is the company, if it's going to be like, this is the standard form of it, I don't want to be. Maybe if a small business will ask the financer to get involved in their business because they know they have better experts.
Sure, if they need it. They want smart money, not just money.
Exactly. So they want the money and the experience and the expertise that works for them. So this will depend on the type of contract that you will have with the financer.
I see. Okay.
But it doesn't have to be involved in the way you run your business.
Gotcha. It's such an important distinction to make that it's risk sharing, not risk transfer.
Exactly.
And that's effectively the core ingredient of that whole thing, right?
And this is social justice.
Right.
This is a lot of justice in this, and people will not at least feel they are alone. Once you feel you have someone supporting you,
Correct.
and it does create a balance between two parties, so it's not like one party has all the power and the other one have absolutely no power.
Yes.
They are both together into this.
Yeah.
So this, it doesn't burn you. If you lose, you will have, you will not just lose everything. You will lose whatever you have put into this business.
Yeah.
Like no.
Later on,
With musharaka, like there's something called istisna. So the word sina means production, or like masna is factory, so it's production. So sometimes it works as if someone wants to produce something, like if you want to make a factory or if you want to add a new production line, they will again provide you for this thing. So you get money for production or something, or you get money. Istizra is to grow things. So you have a land, you want to grow new plants in it, or then they will give you the money for this. So musharaka is a big term, and underneath it comes things that's more specific to a specific goals.
Sure. Okay.
And each one have its own. So I don't want to bore you with all those details, but it does have subcategories as well.
I see. Okay.
Mudaraba means mudaraba means someone provide money to another person, and this person will invest this money. So A has $10,000.
Yes.
We'll give it to someone who called mudarib, is the one who does mudaraba, and this person will invest this money. Of course, the first person will have to understand in what businesses you are putting your money.
But they're effectively a custodian
Yeah.
of A's money.
Yeah, so they give him the $10,000. This person tell him, I invest in A, B, C, D.
Sure.
Which one you like to invest in? He said, okay, I like C, for example. And then you put their money, and they will start to give you profits out of this. So
Right.
this person takes money, and we have quite big corporations and companies in the Middle East. I'm not sure overseas, but their companies, people go deposit their monies.
Yes.
So instead of putting the money and get interest, you actually put the money and invest it.
Right.
So you are not just
production, right? There's
Yeah,
actually something
yeah.
happening.
So we go back to the same point of you are not creating money out of money. You are actually having a production. So this person investing it is businesses.
Yeah.
Businesses means production, means labor, means value to the community, So again, it's all linked together.
Yes.
We are giving some value to the community,
Right.
not just money.
Right. Gotcha. It's not just money begetting more money.
Yeah.
It's
no.
actually money doing real stuff
Exactly.
in
And
real
if,
life.
can you imagine of all the money that's in the bank creating interest is been put into businesses and investment?
True.
I don't think we will have as many unemployed people
Yeah.
because you'll have huge demand.
That's right.
Huge demand on, people need people
I
to
know.
work.
And I guess if you boil this down to some listeners right now might be thinking about parents growing up who were quite stingy, and I don't mean this in a negative way, and I'm sorry, parents. I'm sure you had a really good lesson that you're trying to teach your kids, but maybe you really wanted to start something off the ground, buy a home or do something. You knew that your parents had the money,
Yeah.
but they wouldn't give it to you. And were they being mean? I don't know. That's another discussion. That's another podcast probably, but it's kind of that frustration that that those with the gold aren't letting go of it. And if you only could just use some of it and have a fair transaction around that, you could do so much more and everybody would win.
Exactly.
So it's kind of like that, right? It's
Exactly.
like unlocking that a little bit.
And this is again will take us to another principle in the Islamic economic system is the prohibition of hoarding of money.
Okay,
You
cool.
should not hoard our money.
I knew hoarding was bad.
Well, sometimes, but I mean,
Unless it's shoes, right?
yeah. But again, because in the Islamic economic system, hoarding of money, if you don't use money, you'll have to pay zakat on it, and this is a totally different area that I don't want to even go into it.
But effectively, it's a penalty.
It's not a penalty because it goes to good causes,
Okay,
but
sure.
it's taking 2.5% of
Sure.
for meeting certain conditions.
Hoarding
and
tax, we'll call it then.
And give it to people,
Sure.
to give it to good causes. So,
Sure.
but a human nature, we want to make sure that our money does not decrease with time. We cannot hoarder it. Just put it out there.
Gotcha. So you're disincentivized to amass wealth without deploying it, and you're incentivized to
Exactly.
deploy wealth.
Exactly.
Okay.
So this is musharaka, which means helping in small businesses and investment.
Okay.
This is mudaraba, which means investment
Okay.
and creating money that worth value and making, putting it in the market.
Yes.
Sukuk is basically Islamic bonds.
Okay. Sukuk.
Sukuk. And UK, I think a few years ago, I don't have the information, issued Sukuk with worth of, in 2014, Britain became the first Western country to issue Islamic bond raising £200 million.
Okay. Wow.
That's UK.
Okay.
It's just really huge. And
Yeah.
I was just reading an article lately about even in the mess that's what's going on in the UK now with the European Union, people are still using sukuk and issuing sukuk. It doesn't affect the government. That didn't affect the government in issuing more and more sukuk.
Okay.
So sukuk is bonds, and I will use this sukuk to give you an example and how it's linked to house.
Okay, great.
Property,
Sure.
for example. So the second phase of Dubai airport, and I'm not sure which, one of the African countries, one of the biggest universities, built accommodation for staff members by issuing sukuk.
Okay.
So what is it, and how it's different from bonds? Let's say I want to build something that's worth $10 million. I will issue the sukuk for the worth of this project.
Right. So $10 million would be
$10
issued
million
via sukuk.
and you can buy they might make one suck for 1,000
Okay.
and then you can buy as much as you want.
Sure.
People buy those sukuk, the money is raised to build this property.
Right.
Now this property will be how is it going to ownership, how the ownership is going to be moved to the final owner is by what it's called, it's a combination of lease or rent. It's called إيجار منتهي بالتملك means leasing ending with ownership. I'm sure
Okay.
it
So
has a legal term that I
could you call that rent to own?
rent to
Is
own.
that
Exactly,
okay,
rent to
sure.
own. So this company build the houses, and someone wants to live in this house. They will start to pay a certain amount of money every week. For example, $500. Now, this $500, let's say 200 or 250 is going toward the capital,
Okay.
going back to the person to get his $1,000.
Yes.
And the 250 is going as a rent for the using of the property, but it's going to the other person as profit.
Right. Rather than rent for using the money to buy the property, it's rent for using the property itself.
Yes.
So it's not a like for like. It's not money for money.
No.
It's money for
So
real estate.
Exactly. So for example, this person will own this house in 20 years. So during this 20 years, the person who bought the suck or the sukuk will receive his capital plus a profit.
Right.
So the person who buy the sukuk will benefit.
Yes.
The person who is buying the house will not get a mortgage, will not pay interest, and if you default or if you don't want or you cannot afford it, you will sell it. And the good thing is when you sell it, you will get all the money that you paid toward the capital back.
Right.
So while with mortgage, in many cases, I wouldn't say in most cases, but some banks, what they do is if you default after 5 years, they will tell you whatever you paid was going toward the interest.
Yeah, it's subject to what they sell it for. But this whole thing, it's blowing my mind.
So
it's awesome. So that's cool. So that, again, the ownership and the underlying asset is shared, but it's changing over time, right?
Yeah. So the builder or the organization who issued the sukuk will own it, and then at the beginning,
Yes.
until the property actually moves. So the person will pay rent and capital.
Yeah.
The other person will receive capital and profit.
Yes.
And then eventually after the 20 years, this whole thing will end. So
Right.
this person will not get profits anymore, and the person will own the house, and the organization or the whatever corporation or institution that made this whole project will get out of it.
Perfect. So the organization that provided the sukuk,
Issued the sukuk.
or they issued the sukuk, they get all of their capital and their profit back progressively throughout that 20-year period. And from the person on the other end, the sukuk holder or the bond holder, or is that what you'd call them?
Yeah, the person who buy the sukuk. So
Right.
he is a holder of the sukuk, yeah.
They are basically paying kind of like the equivalent of a mortgage payment, for lack of a better term, in that but it's not really the same. It's not analogous to a mortgage
So
payment.
are you
but there
talking
two
about the
components.
person who's going to own the house or the person who owns the site?
Yeah, the person who's going to own the house.
Yeah, okay.
Because they're making payments, but those payments are divided into two sections, right?
Yes.
One is effectively repaying the principal or repaying that capital back.
Yeah.
And the other one is a rent payment, which would be analogous to an interest payment in the current system, but one's money for money, the other one's money for use of the real estate.
It's not, well, if you want to use it as interest, it's mainly for using the property, because with using it, you are depreciating the value.
Gotcha.
And you
Okay,
you are actually using something. You are using, you are not paying interest, you're not paying money for nothing. You are paying for a shelter, for rooms, for, for living
right.
in a place.
Right.
So it's a service. You are getting something of a value.
I guess it's just hard for someone like me. It's really hard in terms of a mental leap to get that without translating it to
without
something
trying
that you
to
already
compare
know.
it to something you know.
Yeah, and I guess to a certain extent you just need to let go of what you already know and try to think about what is it that you're trying to achieve, and then it becomes a little bit easier, I guess. But it's quite a revolutionary for in my Western eyes. It's a very revolutionary way to approaching.
And UK is doing it. I'm not sure it's doing it for housing or not. But for example, in Dubai, the government issue it and the government own it. So it didn't have a third party.
Sure.
It was just two parties at that time because they paid to the people. And can you imagine how much projects we can build and how much houses we can build costing the government zero?
Well, just thinking in terms of that whole, it's the ultimate in decentralized financing.
Yeah, and also taking the burden of only one party has to pay for everything.
Yeah.
And people will actually making profit.
Correct.
So
yeah, like if you had $750,000 sitting in the bank, instead of it just sitting there doing nothing, could you do multiple investments
Exactly.
issue multiple sukuks.
Yeah.
Is that right?
And many
then-
people, there is actually a small well, I'm not sure if it's still small, but in UK there is a corporation or company called Yielders.
Okay.
And what they do is they have, like, for example, there's a house and people they have properties, and they have people who inspect the properties, just renovate it and make it sure it's a good one.
Yeah.
And then people will invest in this property, so they will buy those sukuk or whatever, and then after 10 or 5 years, when the market value of this house increases, they will pay them back.
Okay.
So this is a different way.
Okay.
This is investing in property, but I cannot afford to buy a house for $500,000 and invest it. I can only buy one room of the house.
Yeah, right, I see. So it's fractionalized.
Yeah, so 10 people, 20 people owns this house, and then this is not about solving the housing issues, but it's about how to invest in property without you have, really a lot. So those yielders, you can invest in 4 or 5 properties. So one property may not, you're not really quite sure, or you don't want to put all your eggs in one basket. So you buy a house, you get one in Christchurch, one in Wellington, one in Auckland, and you just distribute your money. And then after 5-10 years, you get the profit back.
Yeah.
So that's a different way. That's another way of investing in property.
You're right, yeah.
And this is, ownership. Yeah.
And this is where you start to kind of piece these puzzles together, and you can kind of quickly see that, well, hang on, we haven't mentioned bank for a few sentences here. So is somebody getting a little bit nervous on the other side of this? If this actually catches on?
Why banks don't take the initiative, and instead of waiting for other people to do this, they actually can do this. They have experience, they have the experts, they have the resources, they have everything. So instead of waiting for competitors to come, why don't I join the game?
Correct.
And it's going to be much easier for me. And
Correct.
we have a reputation.
Correct.
People do trust us.
Yeah.
We just need to do it, make sure that we are doing it in the right way.
That's right.
And I think they are one of the right people. But we also, the good thing about what those cool, it does have compliances. I mean, there's going to be a lot of research done in this area. What the kind of compliances we need to do, and how we're going to work on taxes and a lot of laws.
That's right. Yeah, there's a lot of regulatory considerations which
exactly.
you can't dismiss it. But I guess if
It's doable.
if this has been going on consistently for 50 years, and it's a system which is ancient, to say the least.
It's 1,400 years
exactly.
old.
So we're not really reinventing any wheels here. No. And if we're trying to solve some problems, shouldn't we look at what's already working somewhere else rather than reinvent this wheel?
So in the U.S., for example, those banks actually are under scrutiny, and
under more scrutiny. Yeah,
from the reserve banks. So
sure.
they
so
have
fall
their
underneath
own
the jurisdiction of that. Okay.
In Australia, the government was very cooperative, and they did pass some laws to support this Islamic system, or what we want to use in New Zealand to call it the social justice financing system.
Right.
So things do exist. It has been done successfully.
Right.
Other part of the world. So we are not going to spend as much time. We're just going to see what other countries did, but adapt it and tailor it to the New Zealand system.
And can you sense any resistance from the existing, the banks will probably say that they're open-minded to a certain degree, as open-minded as they are about cryptocurrencies, where they'll investigate it and they'll be keen to see if it works, but can you sense that there's any resistance or
I don't
concern?
think they will be in favor of risk sharing.
No.
They would always like to shift all the risk to the borrower. So why would I, if I can't shift the risk, why would I share it?
Correct. And can we share it, but really just transmit it and repackage it and sell it to someone else?
Yeah. So, but again, that's where it comes back to the value.
Sure.
We need valuable things. We don't need just money. We need to think about how good is this going to be for the community. And we all have been hearing for so many years about corporate social responsibility, or corporate responsibility to the social. Yeah. How much it's applicable. It's great that you sponsor certain organizations. That's really great, and we are very grateful for it. But I think it will also be good to be inbuilt in the system. that so if one bank take the initiative and become the first bank to provide a social justice financial system, they will not attract all the Muslim community, which is not, which is considerable, but it will attract so many other peoples who really appreciate doing something for the community.
Well, that fruit is ripe. It's right now. Like there's a lot of stuff that's all converging at the same time. You know, the rise of ESG, and then what's happening in Australia with the Royal Commission and the banking over there. That's the time is now to actually stop paying stuff lip service. You actually have to reconstruct from the inside out how we're going to behave. And that the time is now to actually do some stuff here.
And this is why the first phase of our project is education. And we're not just going to educate people on musharaka or sukuk. We're going to educate them about the economic system, this bringing value and social justice. And we're going to talk about why interest is prohibited, why speculation is not good, why we need to be sustainable in terms of protecting the environment and our resources. So people need to understand, because if I just come to someone and telling him, I want to do this interest-free system, without the logic, they will never understand it.
Well, it's just like me. I would be trying to translate it into something that I already do know, and I'll miss the whole point of it.
Exactly, and this is why we need to go a step backward. And I think the education phase, in my view, is very, very important, because people need to, if people understand it, they will advocate for it. And we need people advocation for this. We don't want to go against everyone. We want everyone to be on the same side.
Yeah, so if any of the main banks are listening, now's a good time to have a chat around, well, how can we actually do this in New Zealand in a real way, being authentic and actually embracing the whole, not just part of it.
Exactly.
Am I correct, though, in assuming that it is kind of like oil and water, where you've got the current financial system, and then we're effectively talking about Islamic financing tools here? Are those two things just a little bit, well, they're very defined. Is it possible that there could be an emulsifier, where there could be something that could bind those two agents together?
As long as you stick to the principles of no interest, no speculations, no risk shifting, being more fair and just and sustainable, it's doable. It's nothing that you need a whole new, it's not coming from out space. It's something that use the same tools, use the same technology. I mean, we all gonna use the same banking system or online banking, gonna use business analysts. It's the same, we have the same tool. We just need to stick to the same principles. So it's not like they can work next to each other.
Side by side, right?
Exactly, side by side.
So overseas, where there are financial institutions overseas that are doing this, are the Islamic financing tools a subset of their overall banking operation, like an alternative, or is it in a bank which just does?
It depends. Some banks are purely Islamic. Some banks offer, like in Australia, 2 banks offers Islamic financing. This is what you just said is a very big question. It's much more important than maybe what
I know that definitely. I know what
because it has a much deeper implication. Now there is of course, and I want to make sure that this is in Islam there are different schools. There are different arguments. People always try to find, their interpretation of the rules and principles. So I'm just saying my view and my understanding. And this is very important.
Good point to make,
The second thing, it's when you say, because we talked earlier about that prohibition of investing in certain unethical, So if a bank that offer Islamic finance windows, but many people will still not use it because this money is going to be invested in unethical investments. So many people do not put, and this is with amana. So many people wouldn't deposit their money in banks, which they know they have hotels, because hotels serve alcohol.
Right. Okay.
Okay.
Right.
Or they don't want to invest in like certain, like marijuana, which is becoming legal now. So there are 2 things that we need to be very clear at. There is the tools and the services, but there is the money. Where is the money going and how is it invested?
Sure. Okay.
So those, some people some people will say, I only care about the way I work with the bank, and this is how I will view it. Some people will take a further step and say, no, if the money will be invested, I don't want to contribute to more alcohol or more drug or more tobacco.
Right.
So this is what I said. The question you asked is way bigger, because what is this bank doing is also taken into consideration.
Right.
So can the bank separate? Can the bank say, the money that we're going to take from this window is going to be invested only in this project? Or is the bank going to say, I'm not going to give you interest, I'm going to give you musharaka, but the money is going to one big pool?
Right. Gotcha. So I guess, and like you say, there's going to be a spectrum of people that are going to have significant issues, and they'll probably be quite, it's got to be my way or not my way, the highway, but either it's got to be 100% or don't even go there at all, right? Don't pretend to be something you're not.
Exactly.
And so therefore, if one of the major banks branched off and did something like that was all okay, that's not good enough, because the profits are still going to support their overall thing.
So I'm not trying to discourage banks. Not discouraging banks because they say, oh, I cannot do this. I'm just saying that it's very important for Muslims. So this may not be as important for Kiwis who wants to have a risk sharing, but it might be important for the Muslim customer who doesn't want to invest it.
Yeah, and that's the thing, right? Like, I know if you cook, you're gonna have this question every now and then when someone asks for your recipe, and you may or may not be keen to share that secret ingredient, right? Because it's my sauce, man. It's my soup, whatever it is.
Yeah.
And I get that. I totally get that, right? Like if it felt like that whole system belonged to me, and forgive me if I'm making some assumptions, and I'm sure not everybody feels like this, but if I felt like, hey, this is from my culture, this is from my worldview, and now you're just taking an element of it. No, that I don't like. I'm uncomfortable with that. You're actually really dumbing it down. It's got to be, do it the pure way. Like, be a purist, adopt all of it. Don't just take one of the elements. But I wonder if for this to work especially in the New Zealand context, I wonder if there does need to be a gradual and progressive shift where some of the tools are adopted. But
definitely, nothing's going to happen overnight, and this is why this project that we are trying so hard to get started on, and we're trying to get support of anyone who can support. It's going to be from 2 to 4 years, because we need to make sure that things are done gradually.
Sure.
And things are being done with acceptance and incentives. We don't want just to put something in the market, or even if someone decided to establish, even someone said, okay, I have this money, I want to do this Islamic financial institution, it's not going to work. It needs time. Things needs time to sink and to be observed gradually. So the more we talk, the more we have like dialogues like this, the more people listen to us, the slower it's gonna, people might get, some listener might get 100% of what we said, some listener might get 20% of what we said. But if they have if they find another dialogue about the same thing, they will get more. And slowly things start to be clearer. Because this is totally new to you or many other people who have no idea what the system is.
Well, yeah, that's right. And I think a lot of people, myself included, know that there needs to be something new. Like instinctively, we just know that there's got to be another system. There's got to be something else. And effectively, it kind of, in a sense, it feels like we're trying to build something new, in our minds anyway, out of old tools. But when you kind of see that actually there's a whole segment of the population who've been doing something with tools that are bespoke for that job, you kind of wonder, well, why don't we just do that? And I don't want to be misinterpreted as kind of saying, it's either we all have to do this, but it's just it's interesting to see that there's this there is something that is working, and on the flip side, if you're just a critical thinker, not necessarily paranoid, and not a skeptic, and not, you don't have this financial Armageddon viewpoint like a lot of people do. Just a healthy amount of skepticism. You'd look at the current monetary system and you'd go, right, well, there are some inherent risks here, not with the people, but with the actual structure of how it all works.
Exactly.
There's got to be something else, and there's I can see that there's something else here, right?
Yeah, it is. It is. I mean, first, it's an old system. And it's like you said, it's not something new. Like, it's been there, it's been used, it's been successful. So we just need to think about it,
Yeah.
consider it, look at how, if we think, yeah, the outcome of it is really good, can we accept it? Can we do it? Can we all try to work and make it work?
Yeah, good on you. Okay, cool. Well, now, before we finish up, is there anything else that you'd like to cover off? We've covered a lot of ground, obviously, but
Well, first, I would like to thank you. I didn't get the
No, you're welcome.
opportunity to thank you for
No,
giving
thank
me
you.
this opportunity. And I really hope it was an informative and beneficial for the audience.
blowing my mind. Let's
Oh.
put it that way.
Thank
No, it's
you very
good. It's
much.
good, and I think a lot of people listening will probably be able to draw some links to what they already thought about this, because it's not a new term.
Yeah.
But a lot of people might not be operating from a place of full knowledge in
Yeah.
this space.
And
So-
some people may have never even have
Sure.
or heard about it, which is, I mean, many people heard about it, but not in the way that we talked about it today.
Sure. Yes.
And I think I hope I managed to do some, a
Yeah.
little bit. help.
No, you did. You did. I
And,
really appreciate it. And I appreciate your time. I know that you came all the way up just to see us, right?
Yes, from Wellington.
All the way up from Wellington. So I really appreciate your time.
Thank you very much.
And until next time,
Thank
thanks for catching up with us.
Thank you very much.
Cool.